This is Joe's Corner 76. I'll be commenting on the human condition. In order to change it, we have to be engaged. Taking a look at COVID-19 response, it's really been a fiasco from the start. The government knew of the things that were recommended for the SARS pandemic in 2003 and the swine flu pandemic in the spring of 2009. The main points were a good supply of personal protective equipment for frontline workers, access to sick leave for workers, increased hospital capacity to handle any surges in infection, a system to produce vaccines readily. This government and prior governments did not act on these recommendations. The Liberal government has not been able to adequately respond to the coronavirus. They destroyed PPE supplies and never replaced them. Our military intelligence warned about the dangers of COVID, and they were ignored. The federal government silenced the Public Health Agency of Canada's highly regarded international alert systems for pandemic outbreaks and curtailed much of its pandemic surveillance activity less than a year before the COVID-19 pandemic began. Political correctness was allowed to initially dictate policy towards the coronavirus, not fact. And as a result, our approach to the coronavirus was a fiasco. The government had no plans for domestic production of PPE equipment. They relied heavily on China. Canada experienced PPE shortages. The government made a disastrous deal on vaccines with China. They were late in getting other supplies and didn't request a license to manufacture these vaccines in Canada. There was no consistent and accurate database between all levels of government. There was no coordinated vaccine distribution in place. Canada has been playing catch up all along. We are now 49th in vaccination levels. The lockdown strategy has caused mental health and addiction problems, along with great economic loss and violation of civil liberties that may not have been necessary. It appears we will have corona to deal with for the foreseeable future. We don't know if this virus will be like the flu and require us to be vaccinated every year. We need to rethink our response to pandemics because there will be another one. We just don't know when. I think we need to start from scratch and put a new plan in place, not just an amalgamation of what didn't work. We need to start with the following statements. There will be another pandemic. We just don't know when. What we have been doing really hasn't worked, and we can't afford another episode like COVID-19 and our response to it. There were far too many problems with health, the economy, coordination among different jurisdictions, data sharing among different levels of government, and transparency of information. There were not enough people involved in the planning. We need government officials, health authorities, business, mental health experts, experts in logistics, and coordinated political leadership and a commitment to do as little harm as possible so that the necessary problem areas are handled and contained without making all of society suffer. And consideration is given so no unnecessary abuse of rights occurs for the individual. Restrictions on individual rights will be proportional to the risk of public harm, be necessary and relevant for protecting the public good, employ the least restrictive means to achieve public health goals, be applied without discrimination. We must listen to our early warning systems of our intelligence services and health experts if they warn us of a coming pandemic. We can't go along the politically correct route again. Lives can and will be lost if we don't act quickly enough. Build a structure that has the capacity in Canada to produce PPE equipment in Canada, as well as the ability to produce vaccines in Canada. These processes need to be continually reviewed to see that the supplies are up to date and we are keeping up with the technology used to produce vaccines as the virus mutates, built in capacity in the health system to handle a surge in patients. This would mean that there would be hospitals or field hospitals that would be solely for victims of the pandemic, so that regularly scheduled surgery for cancer, heart, and other necessary surgeries could be continued. For an effective response to the pandemic, it should just not be limited to the health sector, but a whole society approach should be brought to the table to limit the effects of a pandemic, including public and private sectors, communities, and the individual. The health sector alone does not have the knowledge to fully understand all economic and societal issues. Planning that is developed at the provincial, territorial, national, and international levels. We need a coordinated plan in Canada between all governments on how to deal with the health logistics and vaccine rollout. All of these plans need to be updated as the pandemic situation changes. We need to develop a unified and accurate data gathering system. The system has to be accurate, current, and transparent. Let's stop the campaign of fear from the health authorities, the media, and uninformed third parties. With transparency of information, the public will support reasonable measures. The whole objective is to use measures that are effective and address the problems that need the most attention. React where necessary, but not overreact where it's not required. There is no necessity to violate human rights with draconian methods if the right approach is used. Any measures must be taken so that the public knows how they can plan effectively, but we can't use it for political advantage. You all must know what we can and what we must do to overcome any future pandemic. It's your life. Tell your leaders you want it done right. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Joe's Corner 76. You can hear me on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and YouTube at Joe's Corner 76.